We're live. Hello, I'm Manawiltus, and today I'm going to be discussing Koinonism and the exact structure that a Koinonist government would have. So to do that, I think it would be best to combine this with a little bit of exercise in making an organizational chart. So this is going to significantly help that. So anyway, at the bottom, there's going to be a commune. So let me be very clear. This is not necessarily in a socialist sense. This is just simply a community. So the commune is the community in a corporate sense, as in as a legal entity. So that's going to be at the bottom. So, for example, if you ever lived in Italy, uh, the local towns, they're called communes. But anyway, the commune is, of course, going to be below a a I'm trying to decide exactly how to phrase this. I'm going to say a level 1 magisterium. Now, what is a magisterium? Now, magisterium it comes from a Latin word. It has a broad potential of meanings, and that's exactly what I wanted to have. So it's essentially a parliamentary body that legislates but can also act as a court, and based on its legislation can give directives um, to commissions that actually have agency towards particular purposes, such as a military commission or a financial commission that handles the treasury of the magisterium. So then above the level 1 magisterium, you're going to have a level 2 magisterium. So and then, okay, you ready for this? Let me just move this stuff down a bit so that there's plenty of room on the page. And above the level 2 magisterium, you're going to have other magisteria going upwards. Now, the reason why I number them from the bottom up is so that you don't have to worry about renaming the magisteria as the government grows. So potentially, one of the things I've designed this specific system to do is that it can expand infinitely if necessary. So you can be in a little valley somewhere, and maybe you'll only have 1 or 2 levels of magisteria. And of course, the top level is going to be the supreme magisterium, which actually handles diplomacy and things like that. But so all these different levels can be expanded. So in the United States, for example, based on the number of towns that exist in the US, I suspect that you would only really need 2 or 3 intermediate magisteria in order to make the government function. Now, in smaller countries, you might need 1 or 2 intermediate magisteria, but of course, at the top, there's the supreme magisterium. Now, there can be an infinite number of intermediate magisteria. For example, if you had 1 trillion people, you obviously would need to manage the government in a different way than if you had 1 billion people, or if you had 1 million people, or if you simply had 1,000 people. So by having a system that can expand organically and grow vertically and horizontally, it allows you to essentially not have to deal with problems that arise from having a more rigid system like the United States has. For example, in the United States, you can't have an infinite number of constituencies for, let's say, the House of Representatives, or for the Senate. You can't have an infinite number of states, because what happens eventually is that you end up having too many people, and then you can't get anything done. But under this system, what happens is, if the Supreme Magisterium gets to a certain number of delegates sent from the Magisterium immediately below it, then it splits, and then from those split magisteria, which now become an intermediate magisteria, they then elect a new supreme magisterium above themselves. In other words, if things become large, then the government simply naturally and constitutionally restructures itself to fix having become too large. So what I would do is, I would say, if the Supreme Magisterium reaches 100 delegates, then it splits 10 ways. So you've got 10 immediate magisteria below it, and they all have a degree of separation. So let me actually qualify this, because there's going to be the immediate man. What's wrong with my typing today? Magisterium. So all of the intermediate magisteria generally behave in the same way, except for the immediate magisterium, which, because it's immediate to the Supreme Magisterium, what it does is it not only elects the members of the Supreme Magisterium, but it also elects members to the various commissions. So you've got a military commission. By the way, does this have spell check on it? I keep forgetting whether commission has 1 or 2 M's. Let me just check that real quick. Let me just double check that, because 2 M's. Okay. I was doing it right, because I know that sometimes I write in a text document, and if I misspell a word once, I'll misspell it 20 different times in the text document. So, okay. So you've got the military commission, which handles the military matters. Then you've got the budgetary commission, which doesn't do a lot, but it does handle the exact budget. Now, there's also the financial commission, which handles government spending and also organizes tax revenue. And in addition to that, there's also the currency commission, now the currency commission issues the state currency as well as the trade currency and emergency currency. Now, the way trade currency works is that, unlike state currency, which is designed to hold a stable value, trade currency is not meant to be stockpiled. So trade currency can be produced on demand. However, the government may only directly trade in, or as it is, spend state currency and emergency currency under emergencies. So in order to do a foreign transaction, the Supreme Magisterium, or one of the commissions, needs to purchase the a certain amount of trade currency from the currency commission using state currency, and may not stockpile that in the financial commission, and has to spend it immediately. Now, this prevents a number of economic issues that could happen if currency is mass produced simply like that. So this is to prevent the Supreme Magisterium from getting around the limitations, the monetarist limitations placed upon the state currency by simply using the trade currency. So that's something. Okay, and another commission that I think is very important, that I probably should have put up here first, really, is the Strategic Infrastructure Commission. The Strategic Infrastructure Commission essentially handles infrastructure that is deemed to be strategically necessary. In other words, most infrastructure in the country is not going to be handled on the level of the state, but is instead going to be handled on the lower levels as the needs are, as is deemed to be necessary. I think that's the best way to describe it. So let me put some arrows here to determine how the electoral process goes. So there you go. So the intermediate magisterium not only elects the members of the supreme magisterium, the immediate magisterium and the supreme magisterium, but also the other commissions. And there's another commission that I also need to put on here, and that is the how exactly to put this. Courts Commission, which establishes the courts that are under the direct authority of the Supreme Magisterium, because the Supreme Magisterium, while it can act as a court in its day-to-day functions, will not act as a court, but instead has a commission specifically for that. And of course, there's also the Records Commission, which stores all information of government activity and also coordinates with the lower levels for criminal records and other court activity as well. So I'm going to actually push these up a bit. And I'm going to pull this down. Because these commissions are also elected by the Supreme Magisterium as well. So the way it works is that the leading member of a commission, who has the primary executive powers of the commission, is elected by the Supreme Magisterium. But other members of it, I guess it's easier to just go across like this. But other members of the commissions are elected by the immediate magisterium. And certain types of activity within the commissions require a vote by all the members. Other activities can simply be accomplished through the activity of the leader. For example, the military commission, the leader of that is the commander-in-chief of all the armed forces. So he's got a certain power of command. Now, let me think. Was there some other commission that I missed? I do not believe that there was. Did I just minimize? I don't think I should have. Okay. So, I do not believe that there is another commission that I missed here. But there you go. There's an org chart of the government in a rough manner. Now, I can actually make a more detailed org chart of things as well, because actually, all the magisteria have their own records, responsibilities for records, for courts, and for military, and for infrastructure. However, the budget does not require a. Actually, now let me be very clear here. Records and infrastructure and other things don't have to be separated from the direct executive authority of the magisteria. So I'm actually going to remove them on here. But courts and military are things that have separate officers that are constitutionally required. So I'm just going to copy this and paste here, and paste here. There you go. So I am gonna put this here, because for each commune there are a minimum of 3 members of government, and that is, of course, the main responsible individual who appoints the delegate to the magisterium. Now, this can instead be replaced by a collective body if it is deemed necessary, but there has to be one person who is considered the responsible individual on that. There also has to be one person who acts as the advocate for the commune or the magisterium, and who the commune is not required to hold a court. However, each magisterium is required to hold a court. So this person could either lead the court in the commune or could be the simple advocate of the commune. And finally, for military purposes, each person is required to have an officer each level is required to have an officer who is responsible for law enforcement and military functions in each magisterium and each commune. Now, on the lower levels, that's probably going to be a more police type role. In the higher levels, that's probably going to be a more military type role. Now, there's an additional complexity here, where in addition to the magisteria, there's also a sort of additional level here of urban districts, or maybe urban districts is not the same thing, but how about this? Contiguous urban zone. A contiguous urban zone has its own additional. Actually, I don't know exactly where to put this now. Let me put it here, and let me delete that there. A contiguous urban zone has its own responsibilities for shared infrastructure that actually supersedes the authority of communes in some ways. So if you're in a big city, the city, due to the way the government is organized, let's say you've got a city with 1 million people, for the government to function, we can't actually have all of that under one commune. So instead, we have a contiguous urban zone that shares authority on infrastructure and coordinates with the law enforcement of that area, as well as other relevant parts, in order to essentially make sure that the city keeps running. So that it has a common infrastructure zone. So that's if you've got big cities. And additionally, as an alternative type of immediate magisterium, you also have colonies. Now, a colony, in an official sense, is any part of that pertains to the state that is too distant to participate in the regular electoral functions. So colonies are a type of immediate magisterium that has a form of representation on the supreme magisterium, but it has a lesser form of representation that is weighted upon the size of the colony. So for a place to be considered a colony, it has to be at least a minimum of 6 months travel distance away, which means that in the current world, as things stand, there would not be such a thing as a colony. However, if you were to go back into the past, then there would be something that could be considered a colony. And of course, colonies also have courts and military obligations, as well as should put it the other way around. And of course, colonies themselves may be composed of multiple magisteria in the same sense as the rest of the country, and are also composed of communes, as is the rest of the country. Now, if a colony reaches a size where it has the same levels of magisteria as the main body of the country, then it also changes into an immediate magisterium. Now, I could go over the exact. Let me just get a couple more of these out, just to ensure that there are particular officers held responsible for the courts and the military. on each level. And let me just make sure this is singular as an org chart. And of course, in order to form the communal governments, they are formed by citizens who have particular individual rights. Now, it's actually very complex with the rights because people that are imprisoned have slightly different rights in a way than people that are not imprisoned, for obvious reasons that people that are imprisoned, for example, can't travel around and don't have a freedom of association in some ways. So the colony, of course, does not elect people to other commissions. It only elects a representative to the Supreme Magisterium who does not have the same power as full-on members that are appointed by an actual immediate magisterium. The reason why the colony is separate is because of its distance. So colonies and immediate magisteria, another thing that makes them different from other magisteria and communes is that they are allowed to have WMDs. Now colonies, because they're far away, obviously it might be inconvenient to have the Supreme Magisterium handle everything everywhere. So the colonies need to be able to defend themselves. And I think the immediate magisteria having the same rank as colonies per se, a colony might actually be... let me just pull this down a bit. A colony might actually be of a lower rank, and in fact it will be of a lower rank than an immediate magisterium. But there you go. So this is sort of a rough org chart of how the government is generally shaped. So tell me what you think exactly about this. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think that there's something else that should be done? Let me just zoom out a bit. There we go. Oh, let's zoom out more. There you go. You can't quite see it in full view like this, but you can see the general shape of it. So you've got the citizens. The citizens are organized into communes. Now, citizens can also be in the administrative district of a magisterium. However, the purpose and the intent of a government is that they should be citizens of a particular commune. So if you are in the administrative district of a magisterium, a few things happen to you. First of all, you can't vote, because by voting you would be circumventing the system. And there's also a separation of commune and magisterium, or in other words, a separation of city and state, which is something that I think is relatively new to this exact type of government. Let me make sure that this skips the line jump. Let me do an arc so that people know this skips over. Or actually, I actually prefer the aesthetic of a gap. Put a gap. There you go. So anyway, if you are in an administrative district, and the reason why you would be in an administrative district and not a citizen of a particular commune is, for example, if you left a commune, but you didn't join another one. So if that happens to you in there, you don't have a right to vote, and you are punished more harshly if you commit a crime, or at least in a harsh, very strict manner. Now, in an individual commune, they might be very easy or very harsh in how they punish crimes, but in the magisterium, they're all very uniform in how they punish crimes. And also, you're not allowed to privately own any land in the administrative district because it's all government territory. Now, additionally, the magisterium, depending on which one it is, but all of them generally also have the right to take the vagrants that live in their magisterium and are not citizens of a particular commune. They have a right to take those vagrants and to resettle them into a commune. So what can happen periodically is if a lot of people end up without a town, what the government will do is that they'll get together some money and they'll get together the people that they've got and they'll send them someplace to start a town, or potentially to start a colony somewhere. But maybe that could happen, might not happen. But it's a way to deal with people that are not accepted by any community. Now, the actual chance of not having any community that accepts you at all is, in my view, probably going to be very low, simply due to the degree to which multiplicity of functions are allowed with all these different communities. Actually, in order to make this look a bit more balanced, I can just push this over to that side, but then I have to keep that one there, but this one will just shove that there. There you go. That makes it look a bit more balanced, I think. So there you have it. That's the general shape of the government. Oh, there you go. It zoomed in a little bit too much. So you've now, of course, communes are actually allowed to get together and to organize a commonness of law between them. In other words, communes can join together and decide to have common regulation on various issues. Now, they're not compelled to do so, so it means that they don't have to, but they can, and chances are that many will. So you'll have a lot of communes that have common regulations on this, common regulations on that, and that allows for businesses to more easily perhaps go across these. Now, of course, there's also the issue of corporate entities, and corporate entities are going to be a bit more complex on this org chart. Actually, I'm not going to put corporate entities on this org chart because I don't think that would really gel with exactly what I'm doing here. I could also go into the actual individual members of the magisterium and what they all do, but essentially they're parliamentary bodies that then have legislative powers and also powers of holding courts, who then also appoint their own courts and their own armed forces as well as is necessary. So in times of trouble, an intermediate magisterium might have a larger armed force to deal with problems. In times where that's not necessary, they might just have an officer that coordinates police action between the lower levels. But they're required to have one, at least for that purpose. And they're also required to hold records and to have someone responsible for infrastructure. However, that can be merged with other positions, such as the president of each magisterium or the individual responsible for the courts, etc. So anyway, I think this is where I'll probably stop, and I think I'll post this on the Reddit, r/Anawiltus, if anybody's wondering. But there you go. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be seeing you all next time. Anawiltus over and out.